The TSW Roundtable is a proud member of the Star Wars Commonwealth Podcast Network. Follow at SW Commonwealth on Twitter and take your first steps into a larger world.
Hello there.
You want the bad news?
Roger, roger.
The Force. It's calling to you.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Now you will experience the full power of the dark side. That's not how the Force works.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
This is madness.
Let the past die. Kill it.
It's a trap! Fulfill your destiny. No!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the TSW Roundtable. Once again, I am your moderator, Robert Cass, and today we're putting aside our retrospective series of all the Star Wars movies that we're running through. We got the Force Awakens retrospective coming up, but scheduling issues are really tough, so we got a lot of people that want in on that one, but that's coming in the near future. But today, we're just having a conversation, you know, like we're going to talk Star Wars. So, but I'm not alone, and fortunately, because that would be a very boring program. First, I'm going to introduce my first guest, my fellow Canadian, good friend of mine, Carlos Candido from the Tumbling Saber podcast. Say hi, Carlos.
Hi, Carlos.
It's a long weekend for you over there.
Yes, it is. It is. We get the back-to-back long weekends, but then we don't have a family day in February or August or whenever you guys around the country have a family day. So ours is
February.
End of June for us.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us on your long weekend, and this will probably not sync up well scheduling wise, but this is your night off from Tumbling Saber, so we really appreciate you.
Yeah. I had a night off last week for Father's Day, and now back-to-back weeks off with Tumbling Saber. We'll be back on July 7th. So
excellent.
A little break.
Fantastic. And we're not alone. We're also joined by the, I guess my boss for Talk Star Wars, the owner and proprietor of Talk Star Wars, Rob Wade.
Good morning, Paulus Massa. Sorry.
It's going to be one of those.
It's going to be one of those. So, Rob, hey, welcome to Talk Star Wars with TSW.
Hello there. That's my usual one.
You're no stranger to this. So this is this odd. I'm under the Talk Star Wars umbrella with TSW Comics and the TSW Roundtable. So I've always wanted to kind of ask, is it odd for you to be on a show, but yet you're not producing it? It's just kind of...
It is odd, but at the same time, it involves significantly less editing work on my part. So I'm really keen to get on as many of these sorts of things as I possibly can, because it reduces how much work I feel like I'm doing.
Yes. I have 5 podcasts, and I'm on everybody else's podcast more than I do my own.
Yeah, I have 3 that I produce myself, and then I'm on others.
Yes.
I've been on probably half a dozen different shows, maybe over time. And if not for the fact that I do need to sleep occasionally, and this is not my job, I would probably be on more. It would probably be my thing all the time if I could, but I can't. So here I am.
Yes, but you, Rob, you have like a checklist of people from the Star Wars Commonwealth that you've potted with.
Yes.
Is this correct? Is it getting, obviously we're not helping you because I'm sure all 3 of us have potted.
You guys are already on my bingo card. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
On your dance card.
So I need to double check that list actually, because last time I checked it, I was sitting there thinking, oh man, I'm not even halfway through. But then of course we've had some comings and goings from the network. So actually, I think some of the people who were outstanding on my list have actually dropped off, and then some have come in
part of the reason.
Have yet to be. Yeah, exactly. They were like, "Oh man, I've been here how long and not podcasted with the main one yet? Nah, forget it. I'm out."
I think it was. Our number's coming up. We got to get out of here fast.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, yeah, that's also possible. And let's be fair, highly likely.
Excellent. So here we are, guys. We're just talking talking Star Wars. But
I'm going to get into this. It's hard for me.
I know it's a stretch for you, Rob. But I'm going to throw it off to Carlos first because I have the two of you, and we don't have any Knights of the Commonwealth joining us.
I am considered a knight, just letting you know.
Oh, that's right. You were knighted, and now you're hosted.
I was knighted, but never officially, and I keep rubbing that into Kyle's face. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're Asterix Knight?
Yes, I haven't. I was just assumed knight as opposed to knighted.
Right.
Which is cool. I mean, it's awesome. And but still waiting for a ceremony. That's all.
Well, okay. Yeah. But you are a host, co-host on Tumbling Saber.
I am a co-host. Correct.
Correct. Yeah. So, Star Wars podcasting, like, how is it for you? I'm trying to pose this question. Like, does it keep you more involved? Like, obviously, because you're talking about it once a week, but you think it heightens your interest or would you be one of these guys that like, hear about the new movie coming out a month ahead of time and just kind of obsessed with Star Wars with every new movie and then have it fade off? Or is this something Star Wars would, without podcasting, would you be as much into the news and everything else going on?
I think I'll be honest. I think that just listening to the Tumbling Saber podcast and to talk Star Wars really got me into it weekly before I ever podcasted about Star Wars. I think joining the crew was I'm not going to say inevitable, but for me it felt very natural with all the interaction that I had with the guys and stuff. And I just from week to week, some weeks, I'll be honest, some weeks are easier than others. It's depends on the news, depends on how the conversation's flowing, depends on what I had to do that weekend. Sometimes we get to recording time 9:30 on a Sunday, and I am destroyed from my work week and from my weekend. And if I have my kids 1 week on and 1 week off, and depends when I have my kids. So there's tons of things that come into play with the energy level. The interest is always there. And, sometimes when I don't feel like it, 5 minutes into the call, I'm laughing and I'm having a great time. So I think I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a natural behind a microphone, so it kind of makes it fun. It's easy for me just to continue talking as I've been doing for the last 3 minutes. Yeah. And it's you got to be able to learn how to hand things off. And I think we have a good chemistry on the show, and it's really good. And every time Corey says something stupid, I love to shove it in his face. So and it makes for. And I'll be honest, I leave the door wide open for them to do the same thing to me. So it's all about banter, and it's nothing is done maliciously. Nothing is ever done. Like, I love Corey, but he's my Newman. You know what I mean, on the show. So it started that way with the emails when I started writing in. Love the show, love this, Corey. You're dead wrong. And it's like it's become a theme, and it's part of our shtick and our banter. And nothing is ever really planned; it just comes out. But that's because I'm a genius on the spot.
There you go. So we, like you said in the first part, you were following Star Wars every week. It was one of those. It was like you were knee deep into it, because
the Tumbling Saber is what got me really into following Star Wars news weekly, because I had never really gotten into it before. But it started with. I think episode 2 of the Tumbling Saber.
Oh,
where
wow.
I was like, I'm listening every week. I'm not just hooked into the Star Wars news. I was hooked into like the chemistry between Corey and James and Kyle, obviously. And I had known Kyle for a while before that, so it kind of made it listening in on friends having a conversation. And then I just wanted to butt in, which is what I do. So
excellent, yeah. And people don't. People don't realize when you're recording, it can be a grind, and there is a switch you click. I know I do a weekly comedy show with my good buddy Roman, and it's chaotic, and we both have busy lives, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, we're recording. Oh, and it's instant. Oh, fun time.
Yes,
it's
absolutely that.
And eventually you start going to these, because there are a 1,000 or hundreds of thousands broadcasts out there. You know what I mean? Like two bros hanging out, just chatting, and there's also thousands of Star Wars podcasts. But what keeps the people listening is the chemistry, is wanting to be a part of that conversation, because you can read your Google News about Star Wars every week, no problem. But if it's the entertainment that the chemistry brings, that
and it's not that, it's the different perspectives. Like some a piece of news might drop, and you'll be like, okay, well, what is this? But then Kyle would have a perspective, and Corey will have his forever optimist perspective, and then I come in and either, you know what, I didn't see it that way, or more likely you're dead wrong,
right?
And we have fun with that, like. I think that's the fun thing. I like to be a little bit the contrarian, and I think we have a good three-headed monster there. And then Michelle is on the show as well, and she brings her own thing. And when we're all together, it's like herding cats, and it's fun. So I think that when it comes down to it, at the end, it's if we're having fun, I think people listening are gonna have fun as well.
Absolutely, yeah, like magic cats. So
yeah, kind of, yeah. But if it's tedious, then it gets it's tedious for the listener as well.
Of course, yeah. Every listener will pick up on it right away. All right, so I'm going to shoot it to Rob Wade. So
I have to. I was on a roll. I don't know.
Well, 10 minutes is good for now.
Okay, cool. All right,
it's not a political debate, but we'll.
Hey, fair enough.
So, Rob Wade, again, where you are the head of this thing. So were you like every week into the Star Wars thing, or is it just because I guess I'm assuming because of the age of Talk Star Wars and the age of Tumbling Saber and Generation X-Wing, a lot of the shows on our network.
Yeah.
There's it's the news of the Disney takeover spawned a lot of podcasts.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
So that's for me when I got back into. I was always a Star Wars fan, lifelong, and those who don't know, drive-in theater, 1977 with my parents. But anyway,
that was you?
That was me. Yeah.
Oh man,
I thought that was one of the other 12 Robs on the net.
No. That's I'm contractually obligated to bring that up every roundtable. Yeah. So there it is. For those people playing the drinking game at home, there. He just did that. So
roundtable drinking game is a riot.
It's a riot. Yeah. So, but yeah, once the new Disney news hit, then it was like, oh, now I need to find ways to listen. And then eventually, when I hooked up with you and Mark in the beginning, it's like, oh, I got a podcast about this, but wow, I don't want to run a whole show. Maybe I can slip under the radar and get on somebody else's. Like Yoda. So
dude, if the time zones would work, we would have you. I'm sure you would have been a fixture of TSW every week. Where it's just, this is one of those things. Funnily enough, I was just talking about this to my long-suffering fiance earlier, and I was saying to her, I just think sometimes about what a different world it would be for me creatively if I was nearer in time zone terms, even that with
the rest of us,
Robcast and the Tumbling Saber crew and the Nerd Room crew, and you just, I can't help but imagine the limitless possibility that would the doors that would open in terms of the stuff we could get done together.
I know,
and it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it is the geographical lottery I was entered into, if you'll pardon the expression. Because actually, it wasn't me. There was no entering involved on my part to get involved in that lottery. Yeah, it was. I'll stop there. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously, I'm assuming Disney takeover got you back into I need news like all the time.
To a point. I mean, I'm trying to think back to it because obviously, even though it was only a few years ago, my memory is such and my life is such that lots of things happen in that time. And even then, I don't remember everything, unfortunately. So I do remember that the way I got into Talk Star Wars was to look, it popped up in my Facebook timeline because Mark and I have been friends for, I guess, about 15 years now. And we were kind of that kind of friend who might not speak to each other for a little while, but would just always pick up where you left off when you did catch up.
A real friend, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good friend. He popped up on my timeline with episode, I want to say 11 or something of Talk Star Wars. It was early on, we're talking in maybe even single digits actually. And I got the show and I listened to it, and it was back in those days. It was Mark, Steve, and Jeremy. Obviously, Jeremy since moved on to Retro Inc. And is having great success there. Steve has retired from podcasting live, apart from the odds one-time return. And I started writing in, and I think at that point, I realized. I think what had happened more wasn't so much that I wanted Star Wars news; it's that I was getting into lots of different podcasts, and when I saw that pop up on my timeline, I thought, "Oh, do you know what? That's really handy because I don't have a Star Wars podcast. Like I had never followed Forcecast was I think before they were Rebel Force Radio or anything like that. Like never really never really got into like Rebel Force or making Star Wars or any of those outlets.
Same for me,
yeah, I just, I was the names kind of were vaguely familiar to me, but that was about as far as I'd gone. I had kind of a vague name recognition of some of the shows. So when I saw Mark's post on my timeline, I thought, oh, perfect. I don't have a Star Wars podcast. I'll start with this one, and then if I like this one, I'll stick with this. And if not, I'll find something else. And I liked it. And from there, I was on Twitter. I'd had Twitter for a few years and not really used it very much for a while. And then I started to interact with them a bit on there. And then I also, because they were interacting with Kyle, I started to listen to the Tumbling Saber. And then around the same time, I started listening to the Roman Pod and Cast and Generation X-Wing. And, a lot of the shows I kind of consider core parts of my essence now. And the ones especially that I endorse for Emotionally 14 are ones that I got into around that sort of time. The bulk of them are that kind of, early 2016. No, when just after Force Awakens came out.
Yeah, and so like you liked it so much, you literally bought the company. Like
I liked it so much, I thought I'm going to take this and give them money in exchange. And that's what happens, including the machine I'm actually calling you from now is also part of the deal.
So, Carlos is touching on the chemistry that Tumbling Saber has, and so talk Star Wars. This is something you can really shed some light on, because I know my weekly show with Roman, we can tell each other's heartbeats. Like we know exactly, because it's only been us. For I think Rob Wade, you were the only time. Like we've had guests on the show, but you're the only time that someone's came on and replaced one of us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, because of course I jumped in on a random one-time short notice.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, Roman couldn't do it, and then we wanted to keep the streak going, so you were able to hop in. So for chemistry, you've just in Talk Star Wars alone, like you've not including the roundtable. So obviously, this is a different level, but you started off with Mark and Paul and Naked Steve, and then
so actually Paul did not start when I started. He started way later. So originally it was me, Mark, and Steve. Right. It was supposed to be me, Mark, Steve, and Jeremy after so. I would give a little bit of history. So Steve, Jeremy, and Mark were on the show when I was listening. So I started writing in, and the idea I thought was just going to be I would become like a ads for Tumbling Saber or what Vesuvi's become for Talk Star Wars, which is somebody who you can rely on to send some sort of comment in about the previous episode, and maybe they've got some talking point for the next one. So I was going to, in my head, that was kind of what I'd earmarked myself for if I carried on at the trajectory I was going. A couple of weeks later, I got a message from Mark saying, Jeremy needs to sort of step back from the mic for a few weeks. Would you want to jump on? And I thought, well, I've already done podcasts, so I know the kind of etiquette and I know how to behave myself on the air, which is always nice. The family friendly rule, I don't know. I want to say it didn't really cause me that many problems at all. I've messed up a couple of times. Like there have been times where the bleep has occurred and it's been my fault. But in my defense, usually that's because I don't realize that maybe I joined the call late and I don't realize they've started without me and just, introduce myself with, hey, mother effers.
Yes.
And then you just hear somebody go, oh, and I'm like, oh, no.
Well, I know the feeling. That's why I wanted, part of me doing this, the roundtable is to prove to the world I can go an hour without saying lube. So,
that is a good rule of thumb, I think. The lubed time
test.
period. The lube test. Yeah. Well, that's the only conversation for that particular set.
Exactly. All on the round.
It's a good way to live your life. I mean, it's a rule of thumb for the lube.
Yeah. Well, I've always been of the opinion, and I've had a little bit of controversy about this, but I'm of the opinion that if you physically cannot go for an hour without cursing in your jokes, you're not funny.
No.
Like, you're just not. If it's so ingrained in your being that you cannot physically function comedically without it, you are not funny. What you are doing is trading on the shock. And, it's not to say that people can't curse in, and it can be really funny when they do. But if it's so essential to how you operate that you need it, and you can't make something work without it, then I have some bad news for them.
Have you heard my airport podcast? I'm Thinking Out Loud.
Yeah, I heard that one.
Okay, well, I mean,
that one
goes against that rule. I think.
No, I'm talking about if you can't do it. I'm not talking about if you can't do it for 1 hour consecutively. I'm talking about if you cannot do it ever for 1 hour.
Oh, okay. You mean
not as a one-time thing. You can be annoyed about something, and at the airport, I would have the utmost sympathy for that position.
It was hilarious. I was dropping F-bombs left and right.
Yeah, but
the intercom was coming over me.
And
I was part of the shtick.
And also, too, it depends. Like, I know with Roman and I, again, not Star Wars, but we dial up certain things because it is that type of show. Sure. And what happens is you end up becoming caricatures of your own personality. It's like a street artist drawing your picture. It's like he'll highlight, this guy's got a big nose or large teeth or whatever you got going on. They're going to accentuate that. And that's what happens audibly in a podcast. We just, our Canadian accents are dialed way up.
Sure.
We intentionally put in the A's in the boots, we're trying to fit. Again, that's just part of our shtick on that. But about podcasts, it's always, you got to realize, especially with you guys every week about Star Wars. And that was what I was getting to with the original point was, here you are, like, and sometimes I'm sure it's a grind, like you're.
Yeah, like, I mean, so as I say, going back sort of historically, I've podcasted with Mark and Steve, Mark, Steve, and Paul. I've jumped on when we had not Andy from Retro Inc., the other Andy, come in for like show individual film reactions. I've podcasted with Andy from Retro Inc. Obviously, Carlos has jumped on a few. You've jumped on one or two, and then obviously now with Brad. The dynamic changes significantly, and it's not, and each one kind of, well, some of them don't actually. I was about to say each one presents their challenges, but actually some of them don't. Some of them present challenges to kind of enough to bring the average out so that everybody has a little. But there are some where it's just kind of effortless, and that does come with time sometimes. But it does. It's often the case that. If I'm podcasting with a particular person, I'm kind of conscious in my head of what my experience of them is in terms of how they talk and how they, what's a good example? If somebody takes a pause and then jumps into another point, you have to be kind of aware of that, because if you jump in too early, then you cut them off and it just sounds unprofessional, and it makes it harder on the editing, which I've gained. I mean, I already had some appreciation for it, being as I edited shows before Talk Star Wars, but it gives me, every time I'm on a show, it gives me more appreciation for the etiquette you should demonstrate when you're on the show. And
I'll be honest, Rob, like when I jump on with you, and I feel like it's effortless. I think we have a great time, and I'm able to keep the F-bombs and stuff
likewise
at bay. And it's just and coming back to like the geographical thing that you were saying earlier, if we were closer in time zone,
how can you imagine?
It would be fabulous.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you record Talk Star Wars, like Carlos and I are probably literally on the way home from work, like
totally.
just literally just punching out, like we're
seriously. Sometimes when I have jumped on, it's because I didn't have to get my kids at the bus stop, and I finished work in time to be home to press open on Skype. And lately it's been impossible. I'm doing way more hours at work, and
that's life. It happens, right? It's one of those things. Sometimes life gets in the way, and sometimes you just find yourself going like, I just don't want to. And that's also, for me, that's never an issue, actually. But it would be fine.
Yeah, for sure. But it's Sunday, 4:00. It's beautiful outside. I scheduled my day around this recording because I know that I'm gonna get something out of the recording. I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna get to talk to two of the 12 Robs on the network, and I got my dose of sun earlier. I'm gonna be going out later, so it was a nice way for me to schedule my day. And I know some people don't have that luxury. When I can do it, I will always do it. That's the way I am. I'd rather do other people's podcasts than my own. That's
yeah. Like I say, I definitely find myself thinking, yeah, I don't have to do any work here. I love this.
Yeah.
but what you were mentioning earlier about recognizing the beats, with the roundtable, and a lot of time, majority of time, we have Knights of the Commonwealth on, which is fantastic, and it's a privilege for me to actually now the Knights get a sneak peek of what we do because they see the banter before the record button hits. Mm-hmm. Which is usually very unusable. They get to see what goes on or what happens when the call drops out or stuff like that. And also
usually unusable.
Yes, exactly. So, but also too, I think when you were mentioning with Andy and then Adam Sheldon was his first podcast appearance was on a roundtable.
Yes,
that's true. And then it spawned into him joining another host.
Yep.
And then ending up having the Retro Inc. podcast is kind of like the Joni and Chachi for Talk Star Wars.
It's a spin-off.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or like Frasier for Cheers. Like Talk Star Wars is Cheers, and then like Retro Inc. is Frasier.
See, you mentioned Frasier. I was watching Frasier at my mom's last night. That's
good choice. It's one of my. It's probably
I still
my
prefer Joni and Chachi to not the episode, but then
I was gonna say like Frasier is sublime. You.
Oh yeah, no.
You fool.
So yeah. Anyway, so this is it's podcasting again. It's fun. It's privilege. And again, Rob, I thank you again. Just to you let me. I'm on this roundtable so I can talk Star Wars, and I'm forever grateful. I love doing it.
And before we move on, I just want to say that you mentioned the Knights, and coming back to sometimes the tedious nature of podcasting about a certain subject every week, the Knights. For TSW, it's Vesuvi every week is consistently there, and
it's relentless.
And on Tumbling Saber, we had ads for I think it was 100 episodes in a row where he sent in a question, and we constantly get the questions from the Knights of the Commonwealth, from the patrons of Tumbling Saber, and they really are the fuel that pushes the car. Like it's just and I just want to for those that are listening now, I just want to say thank you to the Knights because
100%
it really makes a huge difference, especially when Corey had a bit too much to drink, and the news is slow that week. The Knights are there to prop us up, which is awesome.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's worth calling out also people like you say, Vesuvi writing in every week, but even somebody like Dan Thorpe, who, like clockwork, Saturday morning has downloaded and listened to the Talk Star Wars Patreon podcast, and he's already right in there by the time I wake up on a Saturday morning with his thoughts. Like it's awesome. Just the dedication that takes, because I can appreciate, somebody who not only produces but also tries to get through a lot of podcasts I listen to as well. I understand that that's not always easy, and the fact that he does that like clockwork just every week is just is never short of amazing to me. And if it's one of those things, maybe you guys feel this too, but I never feel like I can truly express my gratitude enough for that kind of stuff. Like people who write in every week, people who comment favorably on it on Twitter every week, people like Neil Lowry who just never stop beating that drum. Like I never feel worthy of that stuff, just ever. It always feels like I'm having to be my best self, and they keep me at the top of my game, which I can only apologize to them that's still not that great.
Well, that's
it's just platitudes for you, Rob. It's okay.
Well, and again, this roundtable episode is basically it's going to be very Knight eccentric because it's aimed to them, and sure. I know the casual listeners that are going to get this on the main feed. We appreciate it. This is a peek behind the curtain type thing of what we do and how it works. Neil, I had the pleasure of meeting him at a celebration in Chicago.
I was jealous.
And we were able to, a bunch of us got together and we were able to get him, and we gave him the Force of Positivity Award from the Commonwealth. And I was just lucky enough to be the guy who was in the moment at that spot who got to give it to him. And again, that celebration, meeting lots of new people, hanging out with lots of great friends, like Steve Kirk, and then the Rogue Squadron guys, and Riley, like one of the Knights, and tons of good times. But that, even being in the crowd to watch the episode 9 teaser trailer drop for the first time and hearing the Emperor for the first time in that moment with all those like-minded people was amazing. being able to have that moment with Neil was the highlight of the trip. Like, it was just
that's pretty special. That's the kind of stuff I'm jealous of. Not like the queuing for 8 hours to get somewhere.
No,
and trying to buy action figures for 8 times. What will end up being an eighth of their eventual markup. But it's like just the ability to meet some of the people who kind of by like almost by reputation from kind of their Twitter persona, and like you say, that might be a dialed up to 11 thing, but you do get a sense when somebody is kind of fluffing up their
also too, when you're walking around and you're spending 8 hours with somebody, they're not, you can't always be on. So even if they do have that,
speak for yourself.
Speak for yourself. I was just going to say,
I'm an effervescent.
Who do you think you are?
No, hang on. That means you dissolve in water.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm going to switch gears for a second. I'm going to throw it to Carlos. The floor is yours. Anything you want to talk about? You need to ask the Robs something. Is there anything you wanted to discuss that maybe guys don't touch a lot on Tumbling Saber or?
No, not really. I think our fingers are in all the pies. Where do you see the Commonwealth in the next 2 years once episode 9 drops? What do you guys see happening with the community, with everything that's going on? Do you see it growing? Do you see it stagnating? Do you see it falling back a bit? Like, what's your vision? These are questions that I ask myself, and never really spoke a little bit behind the scenes with Kyle, but I want to know where you guys feel this is going.
Well, I'll jump in here first for a second. I think, we're just recording a couple days after the sale of Celebration Anaheim 2020 went on, and as usual, people the big fans get on their computer at noon Eastern whenever they go on sale, and they try to get those Jedi passes, because that's like basically you got free reign of the whole of the whole convention, and they're very expensive. But of course, I have never been able to get them. But even
have you tried getting them?
Oh yeah.
Or are you just,
okay. Yeah. I've tried for the last couple of years, and I've tried in groups of friends that are going, and not a chance. It's because it's literally 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Click. You're in a virtual queue. Nope, sold out. Like, it's that fast. And the 4-day passes sold out within a couple hours, like the full weekend pass. Mm-hmm. Now, when I went to Celebration Orlando, Mark Godsif from Talk Star Wars said, "Why don't you come to Orlando? It's pretty close to you." I'm like, "Well, not really, but it's in the same time zone as I am." So I understood his thinking. And then I mentioned it to my wife, and she's like, "Yeah, why don't you go?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a great idea." So that was 2 months before Celebration happened. I went online. I wasn't able to get the 5-day pass or the 4-day pass, but I was able to buy the individual days. And no problem. They'll send them to the house. There I had my badges. I'm off to Celebration. This time, as we're recording, the sale happened 2 days ago. All the 4-day passes are gone. All the Saturday passes are gone. The Friday passes are like 90% gone as we're speaking. So, it's within a couple days. And it's not the fact that they're selling less tickets. It's like, so, and this is going to be after The Rise of Skywalker. So, and we're not having a movie for another 3 years. So this is all going to be video game and television and Disney All Access or whatever they're having. That's what's going to be on the table. And of course, Empire Strikes Back's 40th. So, if Star Wars is dead, or we hear, or a lot of people don't like it, and it's on the downside, it's like, wow, it doesn't show it with the hardcore fans.
No, what I mean is, and I appreciate what you're saying. It's true that the desire for the fans is there, but I'm talking about specifically the podcasting community.
Right.
Like, do you see? Like, because once 2012 came around, Disney bought Lucasfilm, and then the announcement of the new movies. We're riding the crest of that first wave is coming. So there will be subsequent waves, but do you see it dropping off after that first wave?
I can definitely see it dropping off, because the thirst for on the minute news won't be. It won't be there like it was. Because all you guys have your like you said, fingers in all the pies, and I heard this from this website about The Rise of Skywalker. I heard this. So, and then let's talk about it. So what's there going to be left to talk about? There'll be TV shows, but they'll be getting them all at the same time we are. You mean, so there won't be that fever pitch for Force Awakens, like seeing that trailer, like, oh, Chewie and Han, like Han saying, Chewie, we're home. Oh my, you mean, like, I don't see those moments coming up a lot. So I can almost see Star Wars podcasters weaning off.
Yeah,
not necessarily the listener, but I can see the shows going, you know what? We've taken over, we've finished the end of this run, and now we're going to kind of ride off in the sunset.
Cool. What do you think, Rob? Other Rob?
It's interesting, actually. It's a question I've been mulling over a lot. In the last, I would say, probably 6 months, I've been thinking a huge amount about I've been mostly thinking about it in the context of myself and my output, and for how, what pace can I sustain, and what things would I want to prioritize sustenance of going forwards. And naturally the conversation in my head, because it is just a conversation in my head because I internalize and I'm neurotic, has included Talk Star Wars and Star Wars podcasting specifically, because as you rightly point out, there's not not a lot going on. If you're talking about avoiding the rumor mill, which I've been kind of keen to do, because you just end up spinning your wheels on a lot of crap. You end up, like I say, at the moment, there are weeks where it feels like work, because you have to basically pull an hour and a half of conversation out of nowhere. And that's hard. It's not easy. We can joke about like, I can talk about Star Wars for hours and days and weeks and months. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're going to double up on the same anecdotes, telling them the same, telling an anecdote you told last week because you got nothing else, what value are you adding to the discourse? And I mean, there's a lot of things you can say about the discourse, and there's a lot I think you can say about the kind of, it's fair to say, I think, that there are probably more podcasts, more shows, more YouTube channels than there need to be.
Well,
there's a lot of churn through.
I agree with you there, and I think if I just a real quick, I think
I include myself in that, by the way. I'm sure there's stuff I'm doing that's chaff, not chaff, completely different thing. Very similar.
I can see a very big decline in new Star Wars podcasts coming out now that the crest is over.
Yeah.
Any new Star Wars podcast will be either sub shows like this one is of a regular one.
Yep.
That'll be The Mandalorian or whatever TV show is out now or whatever, or we're going to just cover Disney streaming service. So I can see new shows coming out based on that, like just shows that set up. They go the entire run of the series and then they end. But I can't. I can see not a lot of. Oh, I got a podcast about this, like it was with the Disney takeover.
Oh yeah, I think some of the enthusiasm for that kind of I must be first to talk about this has waned in quite a considerable way. And that certainly happened for me, and I don't think I'm alone in that. There's this kind of, I don't share the desire of some that's like, oh man, I've got to let people know what I think about this one piece of teaser art that dropped yesterday afternoon. Part of it is, we've touched on it earlier, I'm on the wrong continent for a lot of this stuff in terms of getting the news out topically. A lot of it can drop while I'm asleep.
Well, and also too, all Disney drops all their Star Wars news.
Oh
sorry,
man, they're the ones dropping those. Man,
Disney drops all their Star Wars news the second you hit stop when you're recording Talk Star Wars.
Yeah, Friday is when they tend to drop their stuff, and we record Thursday night for a Monday release.
Exactly. So
anything that happens over the weekend, we look out of the loop on, and it's not because we are. It's because we are, but at the same time, it's not through any deliberate ignoring some big talking point. It's just we recorded on Thursday so that I can get it up for Saturday for the patrons and then Monday for the main feed. And in the meantime, Lucasfilm's dropped a bunch of stuff. I can't help that. And as I say, I'm on the wrong continent for quick reactions to these things. Because, like I say, a lot of that stuff can happen while I'm at work, and my work is very, very understanding about, you know, sometimes you need to have your phone with you, but at the same time, if I was sitting all day on Twitter, I'm sure they'd have things to say, and I would be the first to you know, accept if they were to lay the smackdown on that particular point. And often I'm ahead of them in saying, yeah, you know what, I'm using Twitter too much. And oh, well, we were going to talk to you about that. It's like, yeah, no, you don't need to, because I accept it. Yep. And, you know, it's just one of those things I understand is, unless you're, you know, and there's certain perks to certain types of work as well. Like, you know, if your work keeps you at home most of the time, you don't have somebody watching over your shoulder and you can get away with more. Right. You know, that kind of thing. Like, and I'm not saying it as in, you know, there's downsides to working at home. I find it a very lonely existence when I have to work remotely. So it's not without its difficulties, but I think there are certain perks that certain types of people enjoy that allow them to do this stuff more efficiently than I can.
Oh, for sure.
So, you know, the reason I kind of mention it is because, as I say, you know, I've been thinking a lot about what the post Skywalker saga era looks like for TSW in 314. Now, obviously, there's going to be stuff to talk about on YouTube, because I'm sure that they'll keep releasing stuff for Star Wars Legion. So there's always going to be a demand for things like Fire When Ready. But, you know, I don't think people are going to want a new, you know, episode 4 commentary every 9 weeks.
Yes.
It's, yeah, well, did we forget anything last time? No, not really. Let's just watch the film. Yeah. People don't need us to do that.
No, yeah.
You know, the commentary thing is cool and all, but at the same time, it's one of those once you've done it, there's no real desire to do it again.
The only thing I can add to that would maybe devil's advocate is if you have an audience that's listening to you not for the content but for the actual banter, then you could talk about anything and they'll listen.
True. Yeah. Very true. Yeah. And I mean, that's been something I've been lucky about, in that I've got other, you know, if people want to hear my thoughts on things, they've got other avenues they can use it to get my kind of points of view on different, you know, certainly things like, oh, he didn't talk about this Star Wars video game in this Talk Star Wars, but I'm sure next time the E14 Gamecast drops, there'll be a conversation about that Star Wars game because it's a video game and that's their wheelhouse.
See, like if we were sitting in a living room together, we'd pop in episode 4. We're sitting down and having a conversation while the movie's in the background. It's a Star Wars podcast, but we might not end up talking about Star Wars the whole time. So it's the banter between me and you that's interesting, with the backdrop of Star Wars, which is fun. These are things that I want to get into. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's the point you're making. I know Roman and we used to do weird and wacky headlines. He'd bring them in and I'd react to them, and then eventually we stopped doing headlines because people come for people listen to the show to hear our banter, and it doesn't matter what we're talking about.
Chemistry, exactly.
But it took 3 years to get there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, if we went on, it's like, well, who wants to listen to these guys? But now that we have our own little cult following and everything else, now we can make it work. And that was done by design, but again, it's like, well, it's
a ride. It takes you time. It takes time and energy, and it takes the kind of focus and dedication that is basically you have to treat it like a full-time job.
Exactly.
With
and again, that's like
with all of the stuff that implies.
Yeah, and like this Roundtable episode, this is unlike any Roundtable episode we've ever had, because it's 3 of us Star Wars podcasters just talking about podcasting.
Talk Star Wars podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. Talk Star Wars podcasting on Talk Star Wars.
Yeah, it's meta. I'm all for things that, you know, smash that fourth wall to pieces.
So Rob, I'm going to throw it to you. Is there anything you want to? I know you talk Star Wars literally every week on a show that's I can't remember.
Well, I took a week off last week, but you know, nobody could argue that I wasn't due.
No,
18 months without a week off was.
Well, you're making up for it now, because now you got 2 in a week. So
there you go. Bring my average back up.
Anything you wanted to shoot out there, like something it could be specifically about Tumbling Saber or whatever you like.
I have a thought, actually. There is one I'd like to pitch into the mix. This is another one I've been doing. it probably comes as no surprise to anybody who knows me well enough. I've been spending a lot of time ruminating the last couple of weeks. And one of the things, I make a point of never ruminating on the air because that's not polite. But what would it? So this is the question I've been toying with as a kind of thought exercise. What would Lucasfilm have to do for you to say, nope, I'm done, and walk away?
Carlos?
Man, that's tough.
Yeah, this is. I've had this problem too.
I don't know. It would probably take a lot because I'm not uber sensitive about that type of stuff. Re-release an Ewok movie, I think, would be probably one.
Yeah,
that would
4K Blu-rays for the Ewok movies.
Yeah,
no original trilogy 4K release, but they do some Ewok movies.
Or have Lucas come in to tinker with the prequels and make them worse. I think that would be something. That would be like what? But they won't do that. Disney they print money. I don't know. It would be very, very. It would have to be something egregious, I think, for me to walk away because I just love it so much, and there are things that I like about every movie, and there's things that I hate about some of the movies. Or I can actually say about every movie, there are things that are like that I don't want and I don't like, and things that I evolve on, and but it still doesn't mean that I don't love it.
I mean, to be clear, I mean more what would it take to be like, okay, I'm, because obviously nothing's going to change about the stuff that existed before that moment,
right?
Like this moment X where you're like, nope. I'm talking about what would it take for you to say, like, I don't have any interest in this going forwards.
I don't know. It's a tough thing for me to put my finger on because I don't. If it has anything to do with Star Wars, I think I'd give it a fair shot. It would be tough for me to. If it got overly political, maybe. But even then, there's a cost benefit ratio to that, and there's pros and cons to every political ideology. So it's hard for me to really put a finger on it. I'd have to say it would have to be something extremely, extremely egregious in my eyes. And I don't think they do that because they're playing both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I'd have to agree because I think I've made mention of this before. Like even after The Last Jedi, I really like the movie. You mean after rewatches, you can pick it apart. You can like there's stuff that you like, but that's like with any movie except for Shawshank. Sure. But so pretty much.
And Mrs. Doubtfire.
I'm a little older than you. It didn't quite hit with me, but
all right, fair.
Sorry.
Run by fruiting. So for me, I'm like once Luke disappeared, I was like, oh. Okay, I'm okay with it. Like my Star Wars, I got to see that teenager, young adult when I was younger, and I got to see his arc, and I'm like, okay, I'm everything after this now is gravy. I've always wanted Episode 7. I wanted that. I mean, that's why I got into the Thrawn trilogy. That's why I got into fanfic. That's why I got into books or legends. Like I desperately wanted to know what happened next because I wasn't done with it. But once Luke popped out, and again, he's not my all-time favorite character. It's just I'm okay with it now. I've lived long enough to see it, and it's very cool. Now, whatever I get is gravy. I don't.
And it's kind of hard to hate that moment, considering that the mentor in Episode 4 goes 2/3 through the movie.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's not like they're breaking new ground with a character disappearing like that.
No, it's true.
What I've found myself doing in lately, just in the last couple years, is I don't have to consume everything. I don't have to read or listen on Audible every novel.
I'm the same.
Resistance. I watched a couple episodes. It wasn't for me, and I'm a 45.
You can get it.
Yeah, I'm a 45-year-old dude in Canada. Like it's not for me, and that's okay.
No.
Like it's so, but I don't feel compelled to. I know this isn't for me, but I gotta slug through it because it's Star Wars, and I think the last couple years I've been able to. Oh, that's Star Wars. I'm not gonna poo-poo it. That's great. It's there for a reason. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's not for me, and I don't have to read it or watch it. So that for me is where I don't think it'll ever. Obviously, Star Wars will never go away for me. Or
sure,
like what would you have to do like for it to be even any one person can be completely, you can hate on them or do something completely egregious, and you'd still be like, well, they'll just cut them out of the picture.
What about you, Wade? You asked the question. What do you think?
I did. Yeah, the best answer I've got so far is
other than the Rose Tico side story trilogy.
Hey, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of that character, but at the same time, if they wanted to announce that trilogy, I don't have to watch it, like you said, right?
Yeah. But that's the mature answer. Like that's not that.
And that's fine.
Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being disappointed with the next announcement. Going, oh, come on, how come that's not for me? You know,
I would argue that a trilogy to tell her story is probably overkill, but
probably
unless it's like, you know, some really deep lore, and we're talking. I mean, she's what, like early 20s, mid 20s in the film, so there's not a lot of backstory to cover.
No, for sure. No, I was just poking. I was just joking.
No, I know.
Go ahead.
The one I've come closest to in terms of an answer that would be like, yes, that's the one, is remaking the original trilogy.
I'm not talking about, would push you off?
Touching it up, like making it look nicer, anything like that. I'm talking remaking the original trilogy.
Yeah.
Because the whole angle for me from Disney's thing has been, we're all about, you know, love for what George has done, this universe he's built, and creating new stories inside that universe.
Building around it.
Yeah. Once they start hacking away at the old stuff, for me, that's like, no, now you are.
You can't reforge the anchor. Like the anchor is what holds everything together. And I agree with you in that sense. And that's why I don't like what George did with the re-releases.
Yeah, I mean,
we loved them faults and all. You didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think I get why he did it, because there's stuff that he wasn't happy about kind of going back because of things like technology and stuff that didn't allow him to make the movie he felt like he wanted to make. And I do have some sympathy for creators who want to kind of present the purest form of their vision they possibly can. So while I didn't necessarily think all the changes he made were needed or necessarily good, I understand the rationale behind them. If you're talking about remaking the original trilogy now, for me, that's purely a profit thing.
Yeah.
That's purely, you know.
And we did the exercise with the Night of the Commonwealth question of recasting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I went through it, and it was fun.
It's fun, but it's not that easy.
It wasn't easy, and it got to the point where it's like, you know what? I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this movie that I'm casting right now. And me and Corey,
charged by this logic.
Yeah, but that's the thing. And I had Corey on Heavy Talkers on my podcast, and we did the exercise. But I quickly moved past that and said, okay, well, now let's recast Spaceballs, because that for me is more fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it came across on the podcast. And actually, when I was doing my list, I quickly like, what about Spaceballs? Like, it's just, I'm kind of with you on that. I wouldn't completely turn myself off to Lucasfilm because of it, but they'd have to blow me away with what they put out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the closest I've got to a definitive answer. That would be, you know, when it's not about working with what George created and adding to it, when it's actually about, you know, knocking down what George did and redoing it, that for me is like, that's a kind of against the spirit of the whole exercise.
Well, I'm going to pose a question for you guys next time you're back on Tumbling Saber and talk Star Wars. You know, the recasting. Okay. How about you recast, but the absolute worst cast? Like it'd be like Megan Fox as Princess Leia, like
Peter Stormare and everything.
I'd watch it.
I know you would, but you understand what I'm saying. Like not necessarily the worst actor, it's just the worst person for that role. But like not talking ages or anything else. It would just be.
What about Zach Galifianakis as Han Solo?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I that's an interesting. That could be fun. Actually, I think I will take that one back to TSW, because I think me and Brad could have a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, for sure. Again, not like opposite. Like you mean, like obviously you're not going to have.
Doesn't have to be
Zac
the
Efron as Obi-Wan. Like no, that doesn't.
No.
Yeah. So,
no. It can still be an old person, just not a good one. Like Not a good fit, let's say.
You got it. There we go.
Because, you know, obviously we, you know, a lot of people cast aspersions on Academy Award winner Nicolas Cage, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think he would be good as, say, Lor Santeca.
Oh. And I love Peter Boyle as the monster in Frankenstein, but I don't see him as Obi-Wan.
This is fair, you know? Like, Christopher Walken's amazing, but I don't want him anywhere near Star Wars. Not really.
My moment of triumph.
Hello there.
Oh.
Should we evacuate?
In our moment of triumph. It's crazy.
Right now. Oh.
Crazy. I don't know why you do that.
Oh, wonderful.
5 years.
Oh boy. Okay, guys. So, unless you guys got anything else you want to wrap up before we end this, and again, this is not your regular roundtable. This is a peek behind the curtain, just some podcast content creators hanging out. As it
was supposed to be a short episode, and you brought me and Rob in, and of course, it's over an hour.
Easily. Well, I'm cutting a lot out, so don't worry about it. They have no idea it's over now. So, just around the table one more time, Carlos. You have a Patreon thing you got going on. Can you tell the good folks about that and all the other stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm on Patreon.
Wow.
Campaign. Wow, it's awesome. No, I have it's patreon.com/Carlos Creates, and what it is basically is every month I release a new single to all my patrons, and the content that comes along with that, be it just lyrics and thought process on why I wrote that song, and all that other fun stuff. And then there's pictures and videos and cover songs that I like to release. And both Robs here are patrons of the Carlos Creates campaign. So if anybody wants to check it out, go to Carlos Creates at patreon.com/Carlos Creates.
Wonderful. And again, catch Carlos on the Tumbling Saber podcast.
Yeah. Or on Thinking Out Loud, at the TOL podcast on Twitter. You can subscribe to Heavy Talkers, a Star Wars podcast, on iTunes and on Spreaker. And when I do release episodes, they're going to be on Thursday. It's not a weekly thing. It's when the mood strikes me. And we'll see what else Carlos will be creating coming up.
Well, also, you're not off the hook. You're still due on the Roman podcast 1 week.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna have to join us, and we're doing that new live stream now.
I cannot wait for that.
I would love that. Oh my god, me on that show.
Don't pump the tires too much. You will be a definite excellent addition to it. But yeah, it'll be a good time.
Oh man, the Venn diagram for excellence on that would be a circle.
Awesome, Rob Wade. For those, I guess if you're listening to this, you're tapped into the feed. But tell the good people about mostly 14 and the Talk Star Wars and all the other good stuff you do.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't mean to do the walking. Yeah, Emotionally 14 is a wonderful enterprise. I made that sound like it makes money, but no, wonderful thing. And it's a website containing lots of different podcasts. So there's home produced in-house podcasts. So Talk Star Wars, Crazy Train, and the E14 Gamecast. So Star Wars, comedy, and gaming are all kind of covered under that umbrella. And then we also endorse a full catalog of podcasts now. So there's actually 5 complete, shows. It's a full, basically, if everybody's doing their bit and releasing stuff, there's a podcast endorsed by E14 every day of the week, which is pretty incredible. So then there's Retro Inc. on a Monday, Tumbling Saber Tuesday, Wulong Talks Wednesday, Nerd Room Thursday, and Roman Podcast on Friday. And those are just 5 fantastic shows you cannot use your time more effectively to enjoy. And then we've got YouTube series, so HeroClix UK and Fire When Ready. I'm sure at some point I'll put some more YouTube videos on, but it won't be anytime soon because obviously, as we alluded to earlier, wedding in the offie. And then there's written stuff and all that sort of jazz. So, there really is it's a really broad church of kind of geek stuff. So there's a lot of fun things on there for people to enjoy. And you can find that on emotionally14.com. And there's a YouTube channel, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at emotionally14 are all branded up. And there's a Patreon for Talk Star Wars. So that's kind of the closest you can get to supporting Emotionally 14 monetarily. And what it gives you is an ad-free version of the Talk Star Wars podcast, which drops a couple of days earlier, available at patreon.com/Talk Star Wars. I haven't really given any thought to any kind of monetization for E14 beyond that. So it's pretty much limited to, ad revenue from podcasting. And that's pretty much exclusively it right now. I feel like I've covered all the bases there. I'm not sure.
I think you got them all.
Yeah, nailed it. First time swing.
And for everybody else, you can go to the Star Wars Commonwealth.com to check out all the shows that are on the network.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good way to spend your time.
Yeah, and you
8 shows now, 8 outlets.
You saved me some housekeeping. Yeah, go and check out Star Wars Commonwealth.com or SW Commonwealth.com.
SW Commonwealth on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. And you check out all the good stuff we have to offer there. So real quick, as we mentioned before, you can find myself. I am on the Roundtable here on Talk Star Wars. I also do TSW Comics, which is coming back soon. Tim, my co-host for TSW Comics, is he just welcomed a new child into the world. So that's why he's a new daddy. That's why there's a little bit of a hiatus, but don't worry. That show is coming back once we can sync up our schedules. And every Wednesday on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to podcasts, the Roman Podcast, me and my good buddy Roman get together once a week, and we just talk. But not Star Wars. Not too once in a while.
It's just called talk.
It's just talk.
Yeah, just talk.
So
fucking crazy.
Just a sweet hang. But again, it's not for children. But if you're in a mood for a couple Canadian guys and a giggle, then you can check us out there. And that's it. So until the next roundtable, I'm Rob Cast with Rob Wade and Carlos Candido, and we'll see you next time. Later.